Week 4 in this Prismatic Draft League Sword and Shield season. We are coming up on the halfway point in the regular season now, and there is, as always, a lot to cover around the league this week. First, of course, here are the standings as of the end of Week 3. So this is exactly the same table that was shown in Monday's video, and you can see back in that video how the Toronto Rock Slide did this week. All the other sets will be covered in this one, but my own sets get their own videos on Mondays, and that's where you can find that. But of course, we have 4 undefeated teams in the league as of the end of Week 3. The East Coast Espurr, Staff United, Pendragon United, and the Ontario Oguris. A bunch of other strong teams behind them. The Toronto Rock Slide under 500 going into Week 4, but actually hanging on in a tie for the last playoff spot, so still looking to build up some momentum along the way. And then a whole lot of other teams pretty close to us further down. Nobody out of the running yet. It is still just the first half of the season. Now, there are a lot of trades this week. I don't know what has gotten into people. I mean, I think probably just it's the middle of the season and people are trying to finalize a roster that they're comfortable with. Plus, there are a couple of replacement coaches who are making changes to drafts that are not their own. But there are some significant shakeups to go through, and like I said, just quite a few trades in terms of raw number. Some of them are big, some of them are small. We do start with a small one here, which actually already showed on Monday. I made the first trade of Week 4. I dropped Linoon and I picked up Ninjask. Looking over my upcoming matchups, I just really don't think there's anything that Linoon can come to. Although, who knows, considering the shakeups. I don't know what those matchups look like now, considering what else is coming up here. And I think that Ninjask, although it doesn't have an amazing toolkit, it has a few key support options that I hope can give a needed boost to a couple of ideas for my team that are not quite panning out so far. So we'll see how that goes over the rest of the season. But now to get into other people's moves. First, the Dreamyard Darkrais have dropped Dragonite and Oguris and picked up Male Indeedee and Hawlucha. There's pretty obvious synergy there with those two Pokemon. Male Indeedee does get Psychic Surge, just like the female does. It can set up the Psychic Terrain, and then Hawlucha can carry a Psychic Seed, so it gets the special defense boost, but more importantly for most Hawlucha game plans, it can activate Unburden by consuming its item in that way. And Hawlucha is pretty good in a format like this. It's a reasonable Dynamax target. It gets max Airstream and max Knuckle, both with Stab, which are pretty good for supporting not only itself, but also its teammates. Pokemon like Zapdos, Celebi, Azulf, Tornadus can all benefit from that speed boost. And they don't have a ton of physical offense outside of Hawlucha itself on this team, although we have seen physical Azulf once or twice. So Hawlucha supporting its teammates in that way is pretty valuable. It gives them sort of another clear mode that they can play in certain matchups. And it gets rid of a couple of Pokemon that they did pick up fairly recently, but that I'm not sure really found a clear place in this team. Dragonite is a strong Pokemon, but it's not as good in Sword and Shield as it is in Scarlet and Violet. Of course, it can't turn into a normal type here. And I think it was a little bit... It is a strong Pokemon, like I said, but I think it was a little bit unclear exactly what its place was on this team. I thought it could be reasonable in the rain mode. You can run Dragonite with moves like Thunder and Hurricane, but then they have Zapdos and Tornadus already doing those things better. So I think it makes sense that Dragonite, I almost called it the wrong name there, Dragonite could be, it was reasonably expendable to give them another clear, coherent mode to play around with. And Oguris was probably most valuable to this team as a Trick Room setter, but this is mostly a pretty fast team. I don't know that they necessarily have all that many Trick Room game plans to work with. And in any case, while female Indeedee does not get Trick Room in Sword and Shield, I believe male Indeedee still does. So they actually still can run a Trick Room mode if they want to, but they also have the turbo fast Hawlucha to complement it. So this makes a lot of sense to me. Next, the Edmonton Empoleons have dropped Moltres and Cubchoo for Frostlass and Lileep. So they really seem to be enjoying the Frost Breath into Anger Point Crocodile strat. Frost Breath, of course, having a guaranteed critical hit. It's not perfect accuracy, so guaranteed critical hit if it connects. But you can Dynamax your Crocodile, side target it with your own Frost Breath, and immediately activate Anger Point and send it to +6 attack. They originally picked up Bergmite to do that, and then realized, unfortunately, that it doesn't get Frost Breath in this generation. So they made the trade for Cubchoo. We've seen them bring that to a game already. And now Frostlass, of course, is a far better Frost Breath user, being a lot faster than Cubchoo and having a lot else that it can do as well. I don't know that Moltres ever really brought a lot to this team. I mean, they've always had sort of a pseudo-sun mode with the Riolu being able to set Sunny Day for the Venusaur. Moltres, as a fire-type special attacker, does kind of have an obvious place in that, but honestly, Moltres is not that strong, and I can understand it being expendable for a game plan that they like more. I'm also a little bit curious about the Lileep here. I've been complaining throughout the season because I drafted Blastoise in the first round that people have just absolutely been hoarding water immunities in this league, and Lileep was one of the few water immunities remaining on the draft board. It does get Storm Drain, just like its evolved form, so not just a water immunity, but it also redirects water-type attacks. I actually could see them using that to protect the Steelix and the Crocodile, both of which we've seen used as win cons in certain game plans. Maybe even the Galarian Darmanitan in situations where it turns into a fire type. I actually think Lileep could complement those reasonably well, protect them from one obvious weakness that they share, especially with something like a Anchor Point Crocodile or the setup Steelix that we saw last week. So yeah, I could definitely see some more Crocodile-focused game plans after this trade. That is kind of what it's signaling to me. The cooler Dreamyard Darkrais have dropped Delmise and picked up Hitmontop. So Delmise is mostly good as a Trick Room Pokemon, and they're not... I don't think this team is all that interested in Trick Room. I think at this point, after the coaching change, they're more about setting up Gravity, getting the Darkrai going, maybe throwing off some fast offense. So I can see Delmise not really... It's a decent Pokemon, but I can see it just not really fitting into what they want to do the rest of the way. That said, for reasons that will come up in a moment, I'm not going to dwell on Hitmontop too much. It's just a good Pokemon with a good support kit, but more on that later. The Nothing Burger dropped Aaron and picked up Azurill. I have absolutely no idea why this is the case, why they did this. I don't know what Azurill brings to the table. I'm looking forward to finding out. But then, less than an hour later, pretty close to an hour, the Nothing Burger came back to the trade channel once again, and they dropped Hydreigon for Galarian Weezing. So, I mean, this team has just been nuts throughout the season. When your first 3 draft picks are Ditto, Silvally, and Mew, we know we're going to see some disruptive game plans, and it's just wildly unpredictable what we're going to get from you week after week. They do have some clearer modes with this team, right? Largely with the Togetic supporting Belly Drum Snorlax or like a setup Corviknight. We've seen the Runerigus do quite a bit of work as a Trick Room attacker as well, with the Slowbro setting Trick Room, as well as Mew. Does Runerigus itself set Trick Room? I feel like we might have seen that some week, but I honestly don't remember. All that said, those modes aside, this team is largely just as unpredictable and disruptive as can be, and there are not a whole lot of Pokemon as disruptive as Galarian Weezing. I don't know specifically what plans they have for it, but there are just a ton of teams around the league that have game plans that rely on some ability or another. And of course, Galarian Weezing can shut those down, and there isn't even any ability shield in this generation, so neutralizing gas is somewhat harder to deal with than it is in Scarlet and Violet. I think we could see Ditto, Silvally, Mew, and Weezing all show up together some weeks, and it's just going to be chaos trying to play against this team, and I think that's exactly what this coach wants, and they were willing to drop Hydreigon for a little bit more chaos. The East Coast Espurr have dropped Drifblim and picked up Braviary. I don't know exactly what they're cooking with this one. They do have a couple of strong physical attackers on their team, and we've seen a lot of their game plans run through those attackers. I'm thinking of the Alolan Marowak and the Rillaboom. So having a Pokemon with Defiant to ward off Intimidate could be pretty valuable. That's sort of the most obvious thing to me that Braviary brings to the table. It's also a good Dynamax target. It gets a strong Stab Max Airstream. This isn't a team that needs a ton of speed control, I don't think, although it can be helpful. I was going to say at +6, Colossal is still not that fast, but of course you can't Dynamax Colossal and Braviary in the same game. I'm not sure whether Braviary gets Tailwind in this generation. I'm going to have to look into that, but otherwise, yeah, we've seen game plans centered on the Alolan Marowak and the Rillaboom. I think just deterring Intimidate is already pretty good. I think the Drifblim just wasn't bringing a lot. Well, I mean, it's a very versatile Pokemon. Maybe it was bringing a lot to the game plans that they wanted, but clearly it wasn't something that they prioritized the rest of the way. And Braviary gives them a little bit more dynamic offense, right? That strong flying type damage to complement some of their other Pokemon. But now, I believe after this, we come to the big one. The biggest trade this week, and the very first trade this season between two different teams. The East Coast Espurr have traded Spectrier, Scrafty, and Gothitelle to the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais for Dracozolt, Hippowdon, and Hitmontop. So, Some of what I've said about these teams in the past is kind of out the window now. I know last week I talked up the synergy of the Gravity Darkrai game plan with Hustle Dracozolt. Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore because Dracozolt is off this team. The East Coast Espurr, they had a lot of different modes they could run with their team, right? They had the Colossal stuff, they had the Rillaboom, Primarina balance options, a lot of game plans centered around screens and a strong attacker. They weren't really doing a whole lot so far with the Spectre, and I know because the draft negotiations played out publicly in the Discord, so I know, or the trade negotiations, excuse me, I know that they started with the Espurr sort of just shopping Spectre around, putting it on the trading block to see what takers there could be. I was not able to make a reasonable offer because of the constraints of my roster, but Cooler Dreamyard Darkrais were interested. The Espurr get yet another sort of dynamic mode that they can throw out there that probably requires less support invested into it than something with the Spectre does. A team with Dracozolt and Hippowdon just gives them another offensive game plan that hits pretty hard, that can be complemented by Pokemon like Rillaboom and Primarina and Klefki. It gives them an electric type to go with their Fire, Water, Grass core, which I do think is always nice. It gives them another strong physical attacker, so all the more reason to have Braviary around to scare off Intimidate users. And Hippowdon even kind of benefits the Colossal because Colossal as a rock type gets a special defense boost in the Sandstorm. And Sand Chip on top of Gmax Volcalith damage, it's not a ton more damage, but there absolutely are situations where it could matter in the rest of the season. So I don't know if there's one big grand reason that they went for this trade, but I definitely see a few things that Dracozolt and Hippowdon bring to the table for this team. And I don't remember all the steps in the negotiation right now, but they had to put multiple pieces together to make the trade agreeable to both of them. The Espurr, I think, are fine with dropping Scrafty for Hitmontop. Hitmontop has a lot of the same support kit as Scrafty, but it also gets Wide Guard. It's just a little bit better as a support fighting type with a lot of the same tools like Fake Out and Intimidate. Then, of course, trading the Gothitelle away means that they are not running Perish Trap for the rest of the season, but I don't know how much they were ever really planning to do that. It's an interesting game plan for sure, but it is a very difficult one to pull off, notoriously. And Primarina is maybe not the greatest Perish Song user in the world, although I definitely think it was playable this season. But I can understand that being something that they don't hold on to in the longer term, as they have these options available instead. As for the Cooler Dreamyard Darkrais, their coach did mention being interested in Spectre because they needed some kind of answer to Regigigas. I guess they still play Staff United at some point this season. But otherwise, for the rest of these moves, I honestly think the Cooler Dreamyard Darkrais, I mean, there might be some, agenda here that I'm missing. And Spectre is a good Pokemon overall. I'm not exactly sure what Scrafty and Gothitelle do for them relative to, something like Hitmontop. But I honestly think the new coach of the Cooler Dreamyard Darkrais might to some extent just want to shake things up, make some moves, create a little bit of chaos around the league. And I am not unhappy to see that. I play both of these teams in the remainder of the season. It makes the prep very interesting to see them shake up their rosters like this. But hey, a little bit of chaos doesn't hurt in an entertaining hobby like this, right? That's all the trades for this week. There are a couple more that have been posted in the Discord, but I'm going to say that those are week 5 trades. The line is a little bit blurry here, but I think I've covered everything that I need to for week 4, and yeah, we'll get to the rest next week. All that said, now that you've gotten your heads around everything that has happened as far as the rosters go, let's go ahead and jump to the battles. Chronological order, as always. This week we start with the Edmonton Empoleons taking on the Zorbe Chatots. And right off the bat, what grabs my attention is this Impidimp on the Chatots side. I don't think we've seen it before this season. It has some of the same support kit as Grimmsnarl, and it does also have Prankster. It doesn't have all the tools that Grimmsnarl has, but it can certainly set screens. I think it gets Thunder Wave. I don't necessarily know what else is here to do. Otherwise, we have the Sand duo of Tyranitar and Dracovish. We have support from Salazzle and Clefable. Salazzle may be able to check the Venusaur, especially in Sand, when it can fairly easily outspeed. In fact, it's faster than pretty much anything the Empoleons have here. I'm not sure about the Frostlass. Okay, Salazzle's base speed is higher, but we could be in for a weather war here. Clefable gives some cover to Dracovish to just go nuts, throwing off a powerful Fishious Rend into most of this team. But Clefable and Dracovish are a little bit weak to Venusaur, so I could see the Salazzle and the Genesect being helpful in checking that. We'll see what the game plan actually is. It's a little bit hard to guess from here. On the Empoleons side, we do have the duo of Froslass and Krookodile immediately. We have that Galarian Darmanitan that's been so scary. They just brought a lot of strong offensive Pokemon. That's largely how this team is built. Anger Point Krookodile is probably something we'll see in this set, but Galarian Darmanitan hits extremely hard and has solid neutral coverage into a lot of the other team here, as well as being able to threaten Genesect with its fire-type attacks. Maybe Stab if it goes into Zen mode, but it gets good fire attacks either way. Regidrago can throw off a big... Actually, half of the Chatots lineup here is immune or resistant to Dragon Energy. That is another thing Impidimp brings to the table, along with Clefable. The Regidrago might not be that well positioned here, but it might be able to threaten Dracovish depending on the speed interaction and whatnot. They have their own redirection support in Togekiss. They have the Venusaur. Let's jump in and see what happens. Tyranitar leads with Dracovish, so right off the bat, the absolute menaces against Froslass and Krookodile. Well, it's pretty clear how both of these sides are starting out this game. Dracovish, of course, probably with Sand Rush, able to throw off a powerful Fishious Rend that doesn't get a strong jaw boost if they're not running that ability, but does get the boost from moving first. And we'll see how Froslass and Krookodile deal with that when they almost certainly wanted to go for their Frost Breath setup here. Krookodile protects this turn and avoids Fishious Rend in doing so. But Tyranitar moves next, actually, before Froslass with the Rock Slide, and Froslass goes for Disable into Dracovish. And I don't know the calc or anything, but Froslass moving after Tyranitar is interesting, for sure. That's either a very fast Tyranitar, maybe with a Scarf or something, or that's a slow Froslass. Anyway, Froslass is not quite KO'd. It's pretty close, but Dracovish is no longer able to use Fishious Rend right now while it's on the field for the next few turns. I shouldn't sleep on that. Disable into Fishious Rend is a pretty cool tech. That said, the Froslass took a lot of damage in the process. It is now knocked out by Dracovish's Rock Slide, while Tyranitar throws off a Rock Slide of its own. Maybe it is choiced. Krookodile goes immediately for Rest, even though it didn't take a ton of damage this turn, and there's no Chesto Berry either. Krookodile just staying asleep for now. Venusaur comes in, Tyranitar Dynamaxes, and Venusaur Gigantamaxes, okay. Rock Slide from Dracovish comes out first, not very much damage, and of course it cannot flinch Venusaur because a Pokemon can't flinch while it's Dynamaxed. Venusaur throws off Max Wormwind. What Dragon attack does Venusaur get? Is that Outrage? I don't think it gets a special Dragon type attack. I think that's Outrage. So physical Venusaur? Does a fair bit of damage to Dracovish, more than half, and gets an attack drop into both of these Pokemon, so that's pretty cool tech. Tyranitar throws off a Max Hailstorm, turning off their own sand, setting up Hail, but doing a fair bit of damage to Venusaur in the process. See Black Sludge on the Venusaur. Dracovish switches out to Clefable. We get a G-Max Vine Lash now. Doesn't quite KO Tyranitar, but it will set up that passive damage. Another Max Hailstorm takes out the Venusaur. It has accomplished a fair bit in its Gigantamax turns, but we'll see if it's enough. Crocodile's still just sleeping through all this. Galarian Darmanitan is the last Pokemon here for the Empoleons. It throws off a Rock Slide. Doesn't care about Follow Me. Knocks out Tyranitar. Does a lot of damage to Clefable as well. Now Crocodile wakes up. Goes for its own Rock Slide. It's just Rock Slides back and forth on both sides this game. Clefable narrowly survives the onslaught. Now we see Genesect. I have been waiting for Genesect to do something cool across all these matchups. This is also Chill Drive Genesect. I did just barely notice that the drive was white in color, and then I hovered over it to check. So Technoblast is an Ice-type move, which makes sense. It's strong into Crocodile, Togekiss, and Venusaur, and also Regidrago. There are quite a few Ice weaknesses, actually, among the Pokemon that the Empoleons bring to a lot of their games. But we see Darmanitan's Rock Slide first. It knocks out Clefable. Genesect does survive and one-shot back with a Flash Cannon. Crocodile's Rock Slide narrowly misses the KO on Genesect, but the hail damage finishes it off, and now we get a 1v1 between Crocodile and Dracovish. Crocodile protects and avoids the Fishious Rend. The hail ends. Last turn of Vine Lash damage, but Crocodile shows Dragon Claw and knocks Dracovish out. There were a lot of Rock Slides back and forth in that game, but also a lot of interesting techs. I cannot think of any special Dragon-type attack that Venusaur gets, so I think it is probably physical. My best guess as to what Dragon attack it gets at all is Outrage. And otherwise, both teams just trading blows, with the Empoleons coming out ahead after protecting the Crocodile a couple of times, never going for the Frost Breath setup, but getting enough damage over time, partly from their opponent's own hail, as well as the G-Max Vine Lash, to break through. And let's see how the Chatots adjust now in game 2. It's Genesect leading this time with Salazzle against Frostlass and Crocodile again. Okay. Salazzle Dynamaxes immediately. What are they going for here? Max Flare into Frostlass, just wipes it out. Just one-shots. Okay, that's pretty good. Then we get that Ice-type Techno Blast into Crocodile, and that one-shots too. So, there we go. Can't sleep too much on Genesect, I guess. The Empoleons already down to their last 2 Pokemon in this game. Venusaur and Darmanitan. Assuming Venusaur is Chlorophyll, I believe it should outspeed the Salazzle, but otherwise... Oh, it might not have Earth Power if it's physical, but it might have Earthquake. Regardless, the Salazzle is otherwise very threatening. It's actually Darmanitan that Dynamaxes here. Max Flare goes into Venusaur and one-shots that, and Darmanitan's own Max Flare takes out the Genesect. It's just KOs back and forth here. Tyranitar comes in, sets up the Sandstorm, but Darmanitan should still be in trouble because, okay, yeah, the Tyranitar actually moves first, goes for a Rock Slide. I am definitely convinced now that this is Choice Scarf Tyranitar, and that does 2/3 to the Dynamax Darmanitan before Salazzle goes for a Max Strike off of Fake Out, I assume, because that didn't do very much. I'm not sure why you don't just Max Flare there, but maybe there's some, you know, very safe game plan just to... very often in VGC, you have a plan that can work, but you have a safer plan that's more likely to work. And so you can play things a little bit slowly, a little bit weirdly, just to be optimal, maximize your odds of winning. I think Max Flare definitely wins on the spot there, but there might be something that they saw with imperfect information from their side of this interaction that I don't see here. Maybe it's just covering for, like, Rock Slide miss into Max Flare not KOing. Maybe Darmanitan has a way to run away with the game. But the speed makes sure that it can't. I think something like that would make sense. In any case, shouldn't matter too much. Max Quake misses the KO on Tyranitar. I think that makes sense. Rock Slide knocks out Darmanitan. That's my guess there, that the Chatots side saw some kind of scenario where they could lose if the Rock Slide the previous turn missed. But they could cover for that by dropping Darmanitan's speed. I don't know exactly the details. I don't think we ever even saw their fourth Pokemon in this one, but it makes sense to me that something like that would be the case. Anyway, absolute slugfest here between those two teams, and we are tied at 1 game win each, so we're now going to game 3. Genesect and Salazzle once again. Same lead as game 2, while the Empoleons changed their lead for the first time in this set, leading with Darmanitan and Togekiss. We haven't seen Togekiss yet. Darmanitan Dynamaxes turn 1. Fake Out goes into Togekiss. There is no Covert Cloak in this game. In fact, we see that the Togekiss has a Rocky Helmet, so the Togekiss does flinch, but Salazzle takes a bit of damage. If it has a Focus Sash, that'll be broken now. Max Quake knocks out Salazzle. And Genesect goes for Electro Web, lowering the speed on both of these Pokemon. The Chatots really going for that speed control in some of these positions. I wonder what they're setting up for in the back. We see Tyranitar. I would think it's probably Dracovish in the back. Maybe they're just trying to make sure Dracovish is faster even if the weather changes. That I think makes sense, especially when Darmanitan should have at least 1 max move that changes the weather, maybe even 2. Tyranitar comes in. Genesect Dynamaxes. Alright, let's go. Togekiss goes for Follow Me. We get Rock Slide from the Tyranitar, knocks out Togekiss with a crit that I do not think matters, as Darmanitan once again takes a ton of damage from that despite being Dynamax. And then Genesect goes for Max Steel Spike, knocking out Darmanitan and boosting defense on itself and Tyranitar. Should be an uphill battle from here for the Empoleons. They have already used their Dynamax. We might finally get some insight on what exactly is going on with this Venusaur's moveset. But if it is physical Venusaur, and the Crocodile certainly is a physical attacker, then that Max Steel Spike defense boost is a problem on top of everything else here. Tyranitar moves first, goes for Rock Slide, it does half to Venusaur, and then Max Steel Spike takes out Venusaur. No more insight to be gotten on its moveset. Crocodile throws off a Rock Slide into 2 targets that both have +2 defense. It does get a crit on Genesect, so that'll ignore the defense boost, but it still doesn't do much damage. And Crocodile now protecting, as Genesect has 1 more chance to throw off a max move. Crocodile avoids a Rock Slide, but Max Steel Spike does a bit of damage, gives another defense boost. And I mean, that should do it. Rock Slide chips Crocodile a bit more, and then Ice-type Techno Blast finishes the job. I am really enjoying seeing the Genesect bring different drives to different matchups as well. This is definitely the most work that Genesect has put in so far this season. I've been looking forward to it. There have been a couple of times now, and I wasn't really checking for it in the first 2 weeks, that Genesect has brought some interesting drive that changes its coverage. And I feel like it's easy to forget that Genesect has that option to hit hard with a few different types, depending on what item it holds. But in any case, like I said, absolute slugfest of a set, but the Empoleons kind of ran out of firepower in the later games while what I assume is Choice Scarf Tyranitar put in a ton of work. The Genesect got positioned nicely after the Dracovish led game 1. The Empoleons had some interesting techs to play around the Dracovish, but yeah, they did kind of fold against these two Pokemon. And the Salazzle being fast and willing to Dynamax early in game 2 also made a significant difference here. Shall we check what Dragon-type move Venusaur gets? I think I know the answer, but I could be wrong. Max Wormwind from a Venusaur is not something I expected to see. So I'm looking for Generation 8. Outrage. This is BDSP, it doesn't matter. Outrage is the only one, huh? Well, that's creative for sure. Anyway, on to the next set. Ryangreenblue taking on the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais. This is an interesting matchup because Ryangreenblue has that hard Trick Room team, and once again we see basically a mix of Trick Room threats here. Conkeldurr, Stakataka, Magearna, Golurk, Vikavolt, a whole bunch of the strongest Trick Room Pokemon in the game, as well as Melodic as kind of a defensive backbone. Could be here to throw off Hypnosis, could be here to set up, could be here to just take some hits, maybe check the Azumarill. But anyway, the reason I find this interesting is, of course, the Darkrai can be very disruptive into a Trick Room gameplay and potentially putting the Pokemon to sleep before they get Trick Room up. Now, Ryangreenblue does have some Wide Guard users. Conkeldurr gets Wide Guard, I think Stakataka does as well, I'm not certain. So right off the bat, there's an interesting sort of dynamic there, where Darkrai is a huge threat to deny Trick Room, but it can be played around, but we'll see what the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais have to play around those game plans. They also didn't bring the Sigilyph this time, so there may not be any gravity for the Darkrai. Does Gothitelle get gravity? Even if it does, it's a lot slower than Darkrai. So that's a little bit awkward to set up, but they have brought their newly acquired Spectrier and Gothitelle. Spectrier, as a fast attacker, does not want that Trick Room up. Gothitelle, being able to trap Pokemon on the field, but it's a hard Trick Room team. You're not switching a ton with one of those. It'd be interesting to see what the Gothitelle does bring here. I'm not sure whether it gets gravity. I think it might. And then, yeah, just some strong attackers with the Azumarill and the Spectrier. I guess you can't sleep on the Kangaskhan either, but I really don't know what the game plan is here, especially without Sigilyph enabling the Darkrai to land Dark Void into these Pokemon. But let's find out. Calyrex leading with Azumarill against Magearna and Melodic. Okay, Melodic protects. Is Magearna just going for Trick Room? Azumarill goes for Belly Drum. Power Swap. Okay, so Azumarill goes for Belly Drum. I was thinking, yeah, makes sense. Aqua Jet doesn't care about Trick Room. It's a good way to play around speed control, although Melodic could be a problem for it. Little did I know, Calyrex was about to click Power Swap and go +6 attack itself, taking the boosts away from Azumarill. Okay, physical attack in Calyrex, sure. I have no idea what they're cooking here. Magearna does not set Trick Room, it just goes for a Volt Switch into Azumarill and knocks it out. So it gets a Soul Heart boost, but then has to pivot out and give that up. That's funny. We also see Life Orb on the Magearna. Darkrai and Vikavolt come in. Trick Room is not up for Ryangreenblue. +6 attack Calyrex just Dynamaxed. And went for Max Guard, okay. Darkrai goes for Dark Void, lands it into both targets, no gravity on the field. That is a 50-50 on each of them. And the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais, their game plan is not anything I could have guessed, but it does kind of seem like they're in the driver's seat here. That said, Melodic wakes up at the earliest opportunity and gets a Protect. Dark Pulse from Darkrai just knocks out the Golurk switching in, and Max Overgrowth. It is +6. It almost KOs Melodic through the Protect, but not quite. Magearna is back. Magearna Dynamaxes. It's the last turn of Calyrex's Dynamax. Dark Void lands into Magearna and Melodic. The Darkrai is not missed yet. Max Overgrowth does a lot of damage to Magearna. Of course, they'll take that nightmare, that bad dreams damage too. Dynamax is over for Calyrex. Magearna has 2 more turns, but it's asleep. Dark Pulse chips it a little bit, not very much. They both stay asleep. What are these chat messages? This is why we can't... First set I won, I missed a 93% sleep and it nearly cost me. If that was Dark Void under Gravity, I think that's 83%. But maybe it was something else. Maybe it was Hypnosis, I don't remember. In any case, Calyrex showing the Seed Bomb, makes sense. There's a physical grass type attack. This Magearna is getting chipped down. The grassy terrain that Calyrex set up with its max move is keeping it alive for now, but just barely, and these Pokemon are not waking up so far. And of course they're outsped. Darkrai knocks out Magearna here. Calyrex knocks out Melodic. Only Vikavolt remains for Ryangreenblue. And it's also asleep, and Calyrex lands his head headbutt with a crit for good measure. Not that the crit mattered. But that was... Wow. That was really something. That was peak performance, I think, for the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais right there. With the Darkrai landing every Dark Void. And the Calyrex going crazy. Let's see if they can replicate it in Game 2. Kangaskhan and Azumarill leading against Magearna and Vikavolt. Gothitelle switching in immediately. Vikavolt Dynamaxes turn 1 as Azumarill just goes straight for Perish Song. Wait, I slept on this. I've used Perish Song Azumarill in the PDL, haven't I? Season 7? I talked about the Espurr not being able to have a Perish Trap mode anymore. I totally forgot that the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais do get a Perish Trap mode with Azumarill and Gothitelle. This is a... This team is something else. This might be the most evil team I've seen in the PDL between these different modes that it can throw at you. No Dracozolt needed, I guess. Azumarill does get one... Wait, this is also Belly Drum Perish Song Azumarill. It used Belly Drum Game 1. It didn't use the boost itself. Clearly the plan was to set up for Calyrex. They showed Belly Drum Game 1, and then they also have Perish Song in Game 2. This is unreal. This team is too much. It gets one-shot by Max Lightning, but the trap is up. Let's see if Gothitelle can survive. Magearna gets a Soul Heart boost, of course, from that, and it does set Trick Room this time. Okay. Can Ryangreenblue break through? We see the Spectre actually coming in with Trick Room on the field. Double protect from... Well, protect from both Pokemon, I mean from the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais. Max Flutterby will lower the special attack on both of these Pokemon. It's not bad in a Spectre. Magearna also does have Volt Switch, yeah, so it can Volt Switch out of the trap. It fails to do that this time because Spectre protects, but the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais have traded away their ground type, and they don't have it here. Still a couple turns left on the Perish counter. Gothitelle actually switches out to Kangaskhan as Spectre Dynamaxes. What is happening in this game? Max Flutterby dropping the Spectre to -2 special attack as Fluttermane does Volt Switch out. Not that it was trapped anymore anyway. Kangaskhan almost knocked out. Melodic is here. Max Phantasm does not very much damage at, -2 special attack. Vikavolt's Dynamax is over. It can switch out of the Perish counter. Melodic goes for Hypnosis, but Electric Terrain is on the field. I'm going to be honest, I didn't remember that. Showdown visuals can really trick you sometimes. This is one small problem that I have with Showdown's interface. I mean, there's text right here, right? They're doing fine. There's text right here. It's the player's own fault, but I fall for this all the time. If the Electric Terrain is not visually on the field, I often have forgotten that it's there. And so it happens here. Kangaskhan just throws a double edge into Magearna, not doing a whole lot. Max Phantasm does a bit more. This isn't going to be Physical Spectre, is it? What is its attack stat? I don't even know. Magearna knocks out Kangaskhan with a Volt Switch. Once again, it gets a Soul Heart boost from that, but has to give it up. But now Vikavolt is back, nice and healthy. Melodic showing Coil. It does have that setup option along with Hypnosis. Electric Terrain is gone now, along with Trick Room. Okay. Dynamax on the Spectre is over. Gothitelle is back. Vikavolt avoids a Fake Out. To be honest, I did not remember that Gothitelle got Fake Out in this generation. I thought that was a Scarlet and Violet change. Is there something else that Gothitelle gained in Scarlet and Violet? I could swear I've heard Wolfglick talk about something. In any case, Vikavolt avoids a Fake Out. Spectre goes for a Nasty Plot, gets rid of those Max Flutterby drops. So I guess it is a special Spectre. Still just did a lot to Magearna. We get Brutal Swing from the Melodic. These two Pokemon are both weak to it, but they're just chipped a little bit. Citrus Berry on the Gothitelle. Of course, there is no more Perish Trap because these are the last two Pokemon for the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais. I'm pretty sure Spectre doesn't get Perish Song. Shadow Ball into Melodic doesn't do too much. Hypnosis connects into Spectre. And it looks like Ryangreenblue should be able to take this one from here, especially with Bug Buzz knocking out the Gothitelle. And the Spectre is staying asleep. Melodic taking the opportunity to set up. I mean, it's not really that helpful into Spectre. I guess you can land another Hypnosis maybe, but you're not really making yourself any stronger against the Shadow Ball. And it did take a special defense drop, I guess, from a Shadow Ball at some point. I missed that one. There's a lot going on in this set, okay? But Vikavolt came in early, got Perish Trapped, got some KOs, and then was able to pivot out because when the Gothitelle switched and come back and finish the job. Really solid game for Vikavolt here. And the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais, I mean, that was quite the game plan that they brought, but it did kind of fall apart without the Darkrai just putting everything to sleep before they could do very much. Now, Ryangreenblue adjusted to the Darkrai pressure this game. We didn't see the Darkrai anyway, but Dynamaxing Vikavolt, setting up Max Lightning, of course protected most of their team from sleep, all but Vikavolt itself because it has Levitate. So there is a bit of a risk in that counterplay because your Dynamax Pokemon then is the only one that can still fall asleep. But they also did actually prioritize Trick Room with the Magearna in this game. So it might be difficult to get the Darkrai going again in Game 3, although we still haven't seen Wide Guard. So I'm very curious to see whether the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais go back to the Darkrai. Let's find out. Spectre and Gothitelle, okay. Against Magearna and Vikavolt. Gothitelle goes for Fake Out into Magearna, as Spectre goes straight for a Nasty Plot. It's just Bug Buzz into Gothitelle. It's just Bug Buzz. It one-shots from Vikavolt. Magearna gets a Soul Heart boost, but doesn't get to do anything this turn, and the Darkrai is back. But Spectre Dynamaxes, and so does Magearna. Max Phantasm one-shots Vikavolt. Magearna also gets Max Lightning, though. We know that it has Volt Switch. If it doesn't go to sleep first right now, it's not great. Well, it'll be +2 Max Lightning as well. I was going to say it's not great damage. But +2 Max Lightning into something with the chance to deny sleep. Just have to not be put to sleep by Darkrai first right now. Spectre is snowballing with the Grimnay, though. And Magearna does dodge a Dark Void, and oh yeah, I forgot. It also gets... It's a Fairy type. It can throw off its Fairy Stab and set up Max... with Max Starfall and set up Misty Terrain, which also prevents sleep. Doesn't even have to rely on Max Lightning. That is a +2 Max Starfall. That'll knock out Darkrai. It got one opportunity to put something to sleep this game, and this time it wasn't lucky. Fair enough after so much good luck in Game 1. Magearna will get another boost off of that. It and Spectre are both at +3 special attack. Kangaskhan is here. Of course you can't... Kangaskhan could fake out Golurk, and I paused a little late. It looks like it does do that, but of course you can't flinch a Dynamax Pokemon, so fake out into Magearna doesn't really do anything here. But the Spectre goes for Max Quake and knocks out Magearna. And the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais, just before their Dynamax wears off, actually they have another turn of it to take out the Golurk with Max Phantasm as well. But they get rid of Ryangreenblue's Dynamax. They get a defense drop into Melodic just before Kangaskhan throws off a double edge. Nice bit of synergy there. Melodic goes for Hypnosis. Showdown tells us that it missed, but of course it doesn't work in Misty Terrain anyway. The difference here between Electric and Misty Terrain being that Electric only stops sleep while Misty stops all statuses. And Shadow Ball from Spectre finishes this off. And so, wild back and forth set. The Calyrex tech was incredible, but the Spectre snowballing also giant threat. The Darkrai completely shut down Ryangreenblue in Game 1. Didn't accomplish much in Game 3, but it didn't need to because Spectre Dynamaxing turn 1 proved what a massive threat that Pokemon is. And the Spectre, it is again interesting that they got rid of the Dracozolt because the Kangaskhan as a physical attacker showed how it can pair nicely with the Spectre. Of course, they traded Dracozolt for Spectres. They were never having both of them at the same time. But the Max Phantasm drop setting up for Kangaskhan is pretty interesting. You could also run an actual physical attacker, Azumarill, with something like that. So I talked about the cooler Dreamyard Darkrais making crazy trades that seemed like they wanted to sow chaos in the league, but they've really put together a team of threats too. It's going to be interesting when I play them later to try to figure out how to deal with this. I don't know how you anticipate things like the Power Swap Calyrex or Belly Drum Perish Song Azumarill, but then they have some giant threats like the Spectre as well. Up next, we have the Nothing Burger taking on the Ontario Oguris. The Oguris have brought Urshifu and Pelipper, the familiar Rain duo. They've also brought Raichu. without Pincurchin, so they can still set up Surge Surfer with the Max Lightning, but like Raichu will have to set that up itself if it wants to. That said, we've seen the Raichu put in a ton of work before, and it's a nice complement to the Urshifu. And then they have a bulky core of Jellicent, Heatran, and Aegislash, which makes sense, I think, because they're up against one of the most unpredictable teams in the league. I think it makes sense to have some just solid Pokemon that can deal with a lot of threats. And also, Jellicent can burn something like Snorlax, Corviknight, or Diggersby. I see there's a Diggersby here. Actually, does Diggersby get Guts? No, huge power. That's what I was thinking of. The Heatran can threaten Pokemon like Weezing and Mew. The Aegislash is just a solid tanky option into a lot of what the Nothing Burger can throw at them. But then, yeah, they also have their core trio of Pelipper, Urshifu, and Raichu to put out their own pressure. On the Nothing Burger side, we do see that Diggersby. It's very threatening into Heatran and Raichu to an extent, but it has a lot of trouble with Urshifu, to put it mildly. So it'll be interesting to see how it's positioned. There's no Snorlax. There could still be a Trick Room mode with like Slowbro and Diggersby. Otherwise, there's no Silvally and no Ditto this week. A little bit less of the usual chaos, but we'll see what kind of game plan they're going for instead. I'm really not sure. That said, the Galarian Weezing, I mean, I talked up the Rain Core. The Galarian Weezing, as long as it's on the field, does stop Drizzle. It also stops Unseen Fist. So they have ways to be disruptive into the Rain game plans from the Oguris, but I'm just going to have to start the replays to see what both these teams are actually cooking here. Weezing and Slowbro leading against Raichu and Jellicent. Okay. Neutralizing Gas is on the field. Slowbro just protects turn 1 on a Thunderbolt from Raichu. Jellicent goes straight for Water Spout. Does half to Weezing. Okay. Weezing goes for Corrosive Gas. Okay, that is not an item you see much. Not a move you see much, excuse me. That is a move that was added in the Isle of Armor move tutor, along with better known things like Expanding Force and Coaching. This is the Poison type one, and you can see it gets rid of the opponent. Well, it gets rid of all other Pokemon's items. So the Slowbro protected to avoid the Corrosive Gas. It gets to keep whatever its item is. But we see that the Raichu had Choice Specs. That was a strong Thunderbolt that will be somewhat less strong now. And Cassibberry on the Jellicent. Cassibberry is, I think, the one that weakens Ghost type damage. It's Colbur for Dark, Wakan for Electric, Rindo for Water. Jellicent's only other weakness is Ghost. So yeah, that must be what it is. I know it's one of those. Resist Berries. So they're recovering for, I don't know, Shadow Ball from Mew, Ghost Multi-Attack from Silvally. Who knows in this matchup? But there we go, Corrosive Gas. You don't see that too often. Raichu Dynamaxes. It'll get some power back from that. Weezing protects. Raichu just goes straight from Max Lightning into Slowbro. The Oguris, I guess, don't want to let Trick Room go up or something like that. Slowbro has the Wakan Berry, though, so it takes the hit. Jellicent throws off still a full health Water Spout. It crits Slowbro. It almost KOs, but not quite. Slowbro pulls through and gets the Trick Room up. And then throws his Shadow Ball into Jellicent as Weezing goes for Dark Pulse. Jellicent takes those hits. The Water Spout's going to be a lot weaker now. It's still able to KO Slowbro with another crit. Back-to-back crits there as Raichu KOs Weezing with the Max Lightning, but we'll see what the Nothing Burger is setting up for in the back. They have Mew, they have Diggersby. Diggersby is going to have to be an offensive menace here. But first we see Mew Dynamax. High horsepower, one-shots the Raichu. That is a strong Pokemon, that Diggersby. We see it as a Life Orb, but it gets burned by Jellicent. Mew being faster than Jellicent is a little bit of a problem in this Trick Room game plan. I do think they needed Diggersby to hit hard for the rest of the game, although it's Heatran and Urshifu from the Oguris, so actually Mew took out Jellicent with a Max Lightning. It is Heatran and Urshifu from the Oguris. Okay, here's the thing. I would not bet that Heatran takes a ground type attack very well, even from a burned Diggersby, and then Mew can probably max Mindstorm into Urshifu. It looks pretty good for the Nothing Burger, except Heatran has the Air Balloon, so they have to deal with that. Heatran should be able to take any kind of hit from these two Pokemon. I mean, who knows? Maybe the Mew has something crazy, but I don't know what the Mew would have that would be strong enough here. There's no rain on the field, so even if it has Max Geyser, I doubt it's enough. So I think if the Heatran didn't have the balloon, the Nothing Burger would probably just have this one. Maybe it's not that simple, but it looks very good for them. But the balloon massively changes this position. Let's see. Diggersby goes for Thunder Punch into Urshifu. Maybe not having a good way to hit the Heatran. Oh, Mew went for Max Quake into Heatran. Okay. So they might not have noticed the air balloon. Fair enough, it happens. But I think if you don't know about the air balloon, I think you Diggersby ground attack into Heatran and Max Mindstorm if you have it into Urshifu. We've seen that Mew, or Max Lightning from Mew. The Mew might not have a Psychic type attack. I'm guessing it probably does. But yeah, they don't get a KO into Urshifu here. They, I think, just missed the air balloon. It happens. It's a small bit of text. So they click a Max Quake that does nothing into that. And the Oguris get a chance to strike back now. Surging Strikes takes out Diggersby. What does Heatran go for? Wait, what did Heatran go for? Heat Wave. It chipped Mew a little bit. Mew does show... Okay, confirming in chat that they missed the balloon. It happens. Mew does go for the Max Mindstorm, takes out the Urshifu. Flash Cannon doesn't do a whole lot back, but Mew's Dynamax is now over. And Trick Room is over as well, so Heatran is faster. Psychic finally breaks that air balloon, but Heatran... It's not enough. Heatran has enough damage to overcome this one before Mew can knock it out. So... the air balloon Heatran certainly made a difference there. I didn't think the position looked great for the Oguris when it was a 2v2. But Heatran being too difficult for the Nothing Burger to break turns this one around, despite Raichu failing in the early game to deny the Trick Room. Interesting techs on both sides. Could still see this one turning out either way. Let's see what happens here in game 2. Togetic leading with Slowbro. I think trying to make sure that Trick Room goes up. Against Jellicent and Raichu, same leads again from the Oguris. It is just follow me. Choice Specs Thunderbolt does 2/3 to Togetic. Jellicent goes for Trick Room first, so the Slowbro ends up unintentionally reversing its own Trick Room. That's pretty well known VGC play. People have gotten me with that lots of times. I still think it's super cool whenever I see it. The Slowbro went for the Trick Room. It was super telegraphed by it leading with the Togetic. And the Oguris have another way to make sure that at the end of the turn, it's not up. Slowbro not going for it again. That is one thing I've found sometimes on ladder, at least. I don't know about like high-level tournament play, but on ladder, I've found sometimes if you just go for Trick Room on turn 2, they don't do the same thing again. I don't know what the Oguris will do here. Maybe they'll set Trick Room for the Nothing Burger. It's possible. But Slowbro not going for the Trick Room a second time in a row, just Dynamaxes. We see another Follow Me, another Specs Thunderbolt takes out the Togetic. And Jellicent just goes for Water Spout now. Doesn't do a whole lot of damage. Slowbro could have set the Trick Room up there. Maybe it doesn't think it needs to at this point. Just goes for a Max Phantasm, takes out the Raichu. Hasn't taken much damage from Jellicent. Urshifu comes in. Mew comes in. You can just barely see Mew hiding back here. Urshifu not worrying about Trick Room, not worrying about speed control. Just goes straight for Surging Strikes into Mew, but it's not doing a whole lot. Mew takes that pretty well. I mean, it does more than half, but it's Surging Strikes. Mew takes that pretty well. Throws a Thunderbolt into Jellicent, also does a bit more than half. The Water Spout's pretty weak at this point. Max Mindstorm knocks Urshifu down to a Focus Sash that I don't think we knew about. But now Surging Strikes will take out the Mew. What's Slowbro going for here? Jellicent recovers. It's Max Phantasm. We already know about the Kasib Berry. This confirms. I mean, I think it was pretty clear already, but the Kasib Berry definitely does what I thought it did. Jellicent takes that pretty well. And Slowbro, it's used up its Dynamax turns and it only got 1 KO. Probably not what they were looking for here. Now they have Diggersby on the field with no Trick Room up. Goes for a quick attack into Urshifu. But they set up the Psychic Terrain with their own Max Mindstorm earlier, so that does stop the priority attack. Once again, slightly different circumstances on the field. Could be a very different situation. If that quick attack takes out Urshifu, maybe Slowbro can grind out this endgame, maybe depending on what's in the back. Aegislash could be trouble, but honestly, Slowbro should match up pretty well into most of what they could have in the back. If they just take out the Urshifu, they set up the Psychic Terrain. So Urshifu will get to wipe out Diggersby with the Surging Strikes here. And Slowbro still has that Shadow Ball that it can click into Jellicent as well. Jellicent just goes for a cover. Slowbro sets Trick Room. Okay, okay. Yeah, see, if the Psychic Terrain just weren't up, they knock out Urshifu there. Or maybe it detects or something, right? Maybe the Oguris stop that. But Urshifu doesn't get a KO there, for sure. And then they get Diggersby in Trick Room. But Slowbro has to knock out the Urshifu now. Jellicent Water Spout doesn't do a whole lot. Heatran's here. I mean, Slowbro is making its last stand, but they still have the Dynamax in the Oguris side as well. Slowbro goes for Psychic into Heatran. Trick Room, Shadow Ball, Psychic, whatever its last move is, might not be a Water-type attack. And it's just getting worn down. The Max Quake will boost Heatran's special defense. It crits. I don't know if that mattered to this specific calc, but I don't think Slowbro was breaking through Heatran regardless. So, fun set on both sides for sure. But the Nothing Burger just got once in each game by the Air Balloon and then by the Psychic Terrain. And the Oguris were able to capitalize. Next we have Pendragon United taking on Lunala Plaza. Pendragon United have brought the Gigantamax Charizard with the Ninetales to set up the Sun, with Exeggutor as their Chlorophyll Pokemon of choice this week, with Pheromosa as a turbo-fast Pokemon that can offensively threaten a lot of what's on the other side, or even click like Speed Swap into Charizard or something, or bring them some other kind of speed control. They have a couple of speed control options. They also have the Ribombee, but Ribombee also as a fairy type is threatening into Pokemon like Noivern, Zarude, and Machamp, so that makes sense to me. And then they have Scrafty. Maybe to shut down some physical offense modes with Intimidate. Maybe it probably helps them threaten Indeedee to an extent. I don't know what Scrafty's here to do, but the Charizard is positioned to go crazy, depending on what counterplay Lunala Plaza have for it. They do have a fast Tailwind setter with the Noivern, but it's not faster than Pheromosa. They have the Blacephalon, which can go crazy into a lot of this team, but I'm not sure how well it matches up into Charizard. I'm really not sure what Indeedee, Zarude, or Machamp brings to the table here, but and I do know because I read the messages in the Discord something about what Licky Licky is doing here, but we'll get to that. Let's just jump in. Okay. Bit of unfortunate news in the chat there. Yeah, I believe the doc does show each team's matchup each week, but I believe it does update a day early. Not really sure what the deal is with that. Unfortunate. This means they must have played this late in the week. There were a couple sets that got extensions this week, so we could be late in the week already. Anyway, Indeedee and Noivern against Charizard and Pheromosa. Noivern Dynamaxes. Charizard Gigantamaxes. Here we go right away. Indeedee goes for Fake Out into Charizard. That does work in Psychic Terrain because Charizard is a flying type. But of course you can't flinch a Dynamaxed Pokemon. And Pheromosa just goes straight for a U-turn into Indeedee. Does 3/4 of its health. Brings Ninetales in. Sets up the G-Max. Sets up the Solar Power on Charizard. Noivern goes for Max Airstream. Gives himself an Indeedee a speed boost. But here comes the G-Max Wildfire. Knocks out Indeedee. Noivern should be positioned pretty well. But yeah, that wildfire damage is of course happening as well. And there we go. There's Licky Licky with Cloud9 to shut down the weather. This is the one spoiler that I had for this set. Charizard not getting that sun boost anymore. Not on the power of its fire type attacks, nor on its solar power ability. However, it's still a strong Gigantamax Pokemon, and they have the wildfire damage set up. See what Licky Licky can do to withstand this, but of course Noivern will be the fastest Pokemon on the field now. We'll see what Charizard can do to withstand it. Scraggy switching in for Ninetales, gets an Intimidate. It's probably not doesn't matter much in Noivern. Scraggy actually survives the Max Airstream. Noivern, very fast, not especially strong. There's now Speed Boost on that Licky Licky. Charizard goes for its own Max Airstream though, doesn't do a whole lot of damage through Protect. Charizard... I assume that's Life Orb damage. Yeah, Life Orb confirmed. Wait, hang on. Airstream. Max Airstream. Speed boost, Life Orb damage. Wildfire damage. Okay, yeah. I was just checking one thing. Max Wormwind into Charizard, chips it, gets an attack drop. That part's not too important, but it's damage. D-Max Wildfire, though, takes out the Licky Licky. The sun will return. Scraggy goes for Snarl, weakening Noivern. Noivern is... both sides' Dynamaxes are over anyway, but now Blacephalon is here in the sun. Charizard does have its speed boosted. Blacephalon protects. Noivern looking to KO the Charizard before... before it can threaten Blacephalon. Charizard does survive the Boom Burst. Blacephalon would have been fine against the Boom Burst anyway because it's a ghost type. It's immune, but it does avoid that Air Slash from Charizard, so I guess that's what they were going for. And Solar Power damage will take the Charizard out. Wildfire damage, last turn of that. Chips Noivern, does nothing to Blacephalon because it doesn't work on fire types. Now Pheromosa and Ninetales are back. Pheromosa should be massively threatened by this Noivern, though. It just goes for Boom Burst again. Doesn't quite get a KO. U-turn into Blacephalon, chips it a little bit, not enough for Overheat to KO. And Flamethrower from Blacephalon takes out Pheromosa. I'm not sure... Oh, I forgot Blacephalon was Ghost. I guess that is why they protected it on their own Boom Burst. I'm not sure exactly what was happening in that endgame. Obviously, I don't have a lot of information on their sets. The Noivern could be... The Noivern could be choiced. Right? Because choice items don't work when a Pokemon is Dynamaxed. And we only saw it click Max Airstream and Max Wormwind, and then only Boom Burst after the Dynamax ended. So, why didn't it go for a Flying type attack into Pheromosa? It could be choiced, or it could be just that they knew Blacephalon could finish Pheromosa off and they wanted the damage into Ninetales. Either one of those explanations works, I guess. The U-turn into Blacephalon... I don't know. Because I have absolutely no idea what Pheromosa's other moves are. It could be like a support set with not a whole lot else to do. It could have a fighting type attack that obviously does nothing to Blacephalon, so U-turn is actually better than that. Might just not have any decent coverage. I don't know. Maybe we'll get more information in Game 2. Noivern and Zarude leading this time. I'm a little bit surprised to see Zarude come to a game, because nearly everything on this team massively threatens it, but we'll see what they're cooking with it. Charizard and Rubombi on the other side. Zarude Dynamaxes turn 1. There's no matching Dynamax this time from Pendragon United. Charizard just protects. And Zarude goes for Max Rockfall. Okay, so some kind of rock type attack. Does a lot of damage to Charizard through the Protect. As Rubombi sets a light screen. Okay. Licky comes in, turns off its teammate's Sandstorm this time as Charizard switches out to Scraggy. And we get another Max Rockfall into Scraggy. Shouldn't do too much, especially with Zarude intimidated. Rubombi going for the Reflect, setting both screens for its teammates. Max Flutterby now from Zarude will weaken Rubombi's special attack ahead of a Pollen Puff that doesn't do too much with Zarude being Dynamaxed. And Licky goes for Belly Drum. It is not just here as a Cloud9 support, it's going on offense. Gets taunted just a little too late. That taunt, if it were faster, could have shut down the Belly Drum. But I think Licky's going to want to attack now. Zarude's Dynamax is over. Pendragon United still have Dynamax on their side. Noivern switches in for Zarude. We see Ally switch from the Rubombi. Licky goes for a knockoff into Rubombi, hits Scraggy instead, does some not amazing damage, and gets rid of an Eviolite as Scraggy KOs with Foul Play, actually using Licky's Belly Drum against it. So Scraggy played perfectly well against the Licky there. No need to worry about the taunt being too slow. The Belly Drum was actually beneficial to it. And there's no more... If they have Ninetales in the back, we know they have Charizard. The weather will not be shut down anymore. That said, Zarude is on the field now. We know it has a rock type attack. Noivern sets Tailwind. So Noivern has Flying Attack, Dragon Attack, Boom Burst, Tailwind. It's probably not choiced. They probably were just counting on the Blacephalon to beat the Pheromosa last game, which actually I think makes perfect sense. Thinking about it more. Zarude goes for U-turn into Scraggy. Okay, brings in Blacephalon. As Pollen Puff heals the Scraggy is actually putting in a lot of work this game, tanking these threats. So that could be a big Pollen Puff. Scraggy fairly healthy behind screens now. Kind of hard for Lunala Plaza to remove. Gets off a Snarl, which is strong into both of these special attackers. Noivern switches out to Zarude. Flamethrower doesn't take out Rubombi through the light screen. Another Pollen Puff gets Scraggy to fall, and Scraggy just goes for another Snarl. It misses Blacephalon with this one. Doesn't do anything especially noteworthy to Zarude. Another ally switch as the Flamethrower KOs Rubombi. I wonder whether that was the intended target. I wonder whether they called the ally switch there. Rubombi has shown that it doesn't have an attack. Well, it does have Pollen Puff, but not an attack that's useful in this... Well, Pollen Puff is useful into Zarude. Rubombi has shown that it's going for a support kit with the screens, ally switch, and then using Pollen Puff to keep Scraggy healthy. So given the Scraggy's at full and screens are up, I do kind of wonder whether Lunala Plaza called the ally switch and intentionally targeted that slot to hit Rubombi. That would make a lot of sense, I think. And Blacephalon gets a beast boost out of it, gets rid of the Snarl drops. Zarude just goes for jungle healing. As, you know, I was going to say that's not a huge deal in this position because Blacephalon, both these Pokemon are fairly healthy already, but actually that gets Blacephalon back to full, and then it survives a foul play from Scraggy with its Focus Sash. So Blacephalon did just get a whole other turn out of that jungle healing. Ninetales does come in. Blacephalon is at 1 HP though. Zarude switches out to Noivern. Blacephalon just goes straight for Mind Blown. Noivern avoids it with the Telepathy. But it does almost half to Ninetales. Does a lot to Scraggy. It's respectable damage. Blacephalon does knock itself out, of course. It only had 1 HP left. Overheat into Noivern. Does a lot of damage. Ninetales switches out with an Eject Pack. And now Charizard is here looking for another go at this. Scraggy misses a Snarl into Noivern. That is, I believe, 2 Snarl misses in this game. Pretty unlucky. Charizard is getting worn down by the Solar Power. Light Screen also is over. Can Charizard pull this one back? Noivern outspeeds everything, takes out both Scraggy and Charizard with a Boom Burst. So, no. Charizard can't pull this one back. Did some damage to its partner Zarude as well, but I think they're fine with that. Pendragon United do still have their Dynamax, but the only remaining Pokemon is Ninetales, so that Dynamax still gets chipped down by Noivern Boom Burst. Max Flare takes out Zarude. It is a 1v1 now. Boom Burst misses the KO on Ninetales. Max Flare crit takes out the Noivern. Wouldn't bet that crit mattered. And Pendragon United. It was an uphill battle. A decent chunk of the way. I mean, the Charizard in particular was just kind of shut down in the early game and never really got a chance to get going. But they do take game 2 with the Dynamax Ninetales preserved in the back. That played a large... I mean, that closed things out, but just the Scraggy being so difficult to remove. Imagine if it landed all its Snarls. Doing a lot of damage back with foul play into certain targets like Licky Licky and Blacephalon as well. And the powerful explosive offense from Lunala Plaza comes up just short against one little Scraggy. Let's see what happens though in game 3. Will Scraggy shut things down again? Will Charizard get going? Will Blacephalon or Noivern or someone just blast through the competition? Let's find out. Noivern leads with Indeedee against Charizard and Pheromosa. I believe these are the same leads as game 1, right? Noivern Dynamaxes. Charizard Gigantamaxes. Indeedee goes for Fake Out into Pheromosa this time, but Pheromosa, not a flying type, is protected by the Psychic Terrain. And Pheromosa goes for Speed Swap into Charizard. This is something that I've been wanting to see ever since they drafted these two Pokemon. Pheromosa has one of the highest speed stats in the league. It might be the 3rd highest after 2 of my Pokemon, Regieleki and Ninjask. I'm not sure if there's anything else faster than Pheromosa. But now Charizard has this speed stat. It gets a big max airstream into Noivern, so can keep up with Noivern's max airstream. Noivern goes for its own max airstream, knocks Pheromosa down to a Focus Sash. Pheromosa not gone yet. Noivern max guards. Does deny the G-Max Wildfire this turn, and there's only one Dynamax turn left, but on the other hand, how do you stop G-Max Wildfire a second time? Pheromosa U-turning Indeedee for big damage, pivots out to Scraggy. Indeedee throws a Dazzling Gleam, which does a fair bit to Scraggy. That's a decent answer to that Pokemon. Scraggy just goes for Detect this turn as Indeedee goes for Follow Me, but I think Charizard is looking to take it out anyway with the G-Max Wildfire. Maybe that targeted Noivern, actually. I don't know. But they take out Indeedee. I guess either one of those Pokemon makes Scraggy's job harder than it was last game, but Charizard has done a lot of work already, and again, it's still, after the Dynamax wears off, going to be as fast as a Pheromosa. That said, Noivern got a max airstream into Scraggy. Yeah, they were probably trying to target Noivern and deny another max airstream, because Noivern will be faster than Charizard again now. That said, Noivern, its Dynamax is also over, and it does not have much time left with this G-Max Wildfire set up. So it looks good for Pendragon United either way. Scraggy switches out to Ninetales. Machamp is on the field. It protects. Noivern says Tailwind. Yeah, they probably would have liked to deny that too. They probably were targeting Noivern that last turn. Noivern does drop now to the Wildfire damage. Machamp gets a burn from its Flame Orb, so it's Guts Machamp. Blacephalon is here in the sun, in Tailwind, and Charizard's only at +1 speed. Blacephalon goes for Shadow Ball into Ninetales as Charizard protects. Machamp throws off a Rock Slide. Guts boosted, takes out the Ninetales. And this Charizard might just not be fast enough. Still 2 turns of Tailwind left, but Scraggy's here. There's no Psychic Terrain. It can fake out. Machamp protect. Well, it can fake out Machamp specifically. Blacephalon's a Ghost type, but it doesn't. We don't get to see what it went for because Blacephalon takes it out with a Flamethrower. Blacephalon now +1 with the Beast Boost. 1 turn of Tailwind remaining. Pheromosa's back with its original speed. So Charizard and Pheromosa have the same speed now. It should be higher than these two, but only after the Tailwind wears off. Charizard protects. Pheromosa protects. Pheromosa has U-turn, Speed Swap, Protect. It probably just didn't have anything better to cover Blacephalon in Game 1 than that U-turn. Pheromosa avoids a Flamethrower. Both Pokemon avoid a Rock Slide. Tailwind is over. Lunala Plaza played a solid speed control game, but it might be too late now. Does Speed Swap still affect Pheromosa, or are they back to their same speed? I believe they are back. I believe the Speed Swap does wear off when they switch out. So, both have Pharaoh speed. That is my understanding. Machamp protects. Charizard Air Slash knocks Blacephalon down with its Focus Sash. Pheromosa close combats into Machamp. Last move confirmed. It didn't have anything better to cover the Blacephalon than U-turn. That explains Game 1, but also we might find out in chat in a moment. Did they forget about the Focus Sash? Mindblowing takes up Blacephalon and both opponents, but Machamp is the last Pokemon standing. So I thought that maybe Pendragon United were in trouble when the Charizard targeted a Max Guard on one of those Dynamax turns. Because I think they would have been a little comfier with 2 Max Airstreams and a Wildfire, but they got through the Tailwind. It looked okay. I mean, I guess it's just a... It's just a 50-50, isn't it? Because if Machamp goes for Rock Slide and you didn't target it, then it wins the game that way. Pheromosa was a 1, yeah. So if you double target Blacephalon and Machamp protects, Pendragon United just wins. If you double target Blacephalon and Machamp lands a Rock Slide into both targets, Lunala Plaza wins. If the Rock Slide misses a target, Pendragon United wins. If Blacephalon, if Machamp doesn't protect and they target the way they did, they knock Blacephalon down to its Sash, they knock out Machamp, then the Mind Blown goes off, and everybody's knocked out, and it's a 0-0 finish. Who wins that? Blacephalon would be the slowest Pokemon left on the field at that point, but I'm not sure that matters outside of a Perish endgame. I don't actually know this one. If Blacephalon knocks itself, if Machamp is KO'd, and Blacephalon knocks itself and both opponents out with Mind Blown, does Lunala Plaza win that? I think they might. It's just a question of the order in which things happen, isn't it? Okay, Blacephalon fainted first, so no, I think Pendragon United would win that. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the answer is if Blacephalon faints first, then Pendragon United wins in that one scenario. So I think it was a 50-50, and they just got the call wrong. What a set. About as close as can possibly be. I guess Machamp still being on the field instead of the scenario where everybody's knocked out and it's 0-0. Whatever, still about as close as can be. That's kind of too bad that's not the last one for this week, but there are still some more. Next we have Staff United taking on the Bashful Bisharps. Staff United bringing Regigigas, Weezing, Nihilego, Dragapult, a lot of the strong threats we've seen throughout the season. Meowstic as another support option along with the Weezing. Probably want to keep it away from the Weezing, but like they have those two that they can mix and match. And Butterfree, kind of unpredictable. It can set Tailwind. It can try to set up with Quiver Dance, although this looks like an awful matchup for it to do that. We could see G-Max Butterfree clicking G-Max Befuddle, but I think Tailwind Sleep Powder support is more likely. And we'll see how Regigigas, Nihilego, and Dragapult as the offensive Pokemon most likely try to break through. On the Bisharp side, we get this familiar Hail duo of Alolan Ninetales and Arctozolt, as well as the Tapu Koko. So Arctozolt getting every kind of weather and terrain boost it could want as usual. Terrakion looks super strong into this team. It's very threatening into Nihilego, Butterfree, Regigigas. Has to avoid getting burned by Wheezing or paralyzed by Meowstic. Kind of has some Dragapult issues, but if they position it right, it should do pretty well here. And Dragapult could have some trouble dealing with Arctozolt and Snow, right? Or dealing with Tapu Koko in some positions. Scizor makes a lot of sense to me as well. It can't be poisoned by Wheezing. Just the bullet, just like basic bullet punch U-turn kind of coverage can be massively threatening into Nihilego, Meowstic, Dragapult, Butterfree. Scizor is actually a giant threat to this whole team pretty much. I mean, Regigigas could be running like Fire Punch, but otherwise doesn't especially want to face it. It's just kind of hard for Regigigas to break. And then they have the Slowking as well. That is an interesting Pokemon to see here. I wonder whether there's some kind of Trick Room mode with this team, although it's kind of hard to imagine what it would be. Maybe with the Scizor, but let's just jump in and find out. Ninetales and Arctozolt right off the bat. Still enjoying that shiny Arctozolt every time I see it. Against Wheezing and Regigigas. Ninetales Dynamaxes, didn't see that one coming. Max Hailstorm does not great damage to Regigigas, but it does set up the Hail. And Dracozolt doubles up with a Bolt Beak, and it all... Arctozolt doubles up with a Bolt Beak, and it almost gets the KO. It just misses by 2%. Regigigas will get a chance to attack here. But it goes for Heavy Slam into Ninetales. Okay, Staff United didn't see the Dynamax coming either. That was crazy. And they actually will take Regigigas out with the hail damage here, so that worked. That surprise worked perfectly for the Bashful Bisharps. That is good stuff. Heavy Slam, of course, failing because attacks that have their damage influenced by the relative weight of the Pokemon always fail into Dynamax targets. That's why Low Kick is not as good in Sword and Shield as it is in most generations, and you pretty much never see Grass Knot and whatnot. Heavy Slam calculates its damage on the relative weight. Regigigas, I'm sure, is a lot faster than Alola Ninetales, plus it's a Steel-type attack, and Alola Ninetales has a double weakness to that. But it uses weight in its damage, so it doesn't work into Dynamax. Wheezing misses a Will-O-Wisp into Arctozolt, just adding insult to injury for Staff United this turn, as Regigigas does drop to the hail damage. Dragapult comes in. It Dynamaxes right away. Probably I mean, it looks like they're pretty far behind, right? Dragapult should probably have to already be in a position where it has to save the whole game by itself, but Max Steel Spike is not going to fail into that Ninetales. We do see a Focus Sash. That'll protect him a little bit against the Arctozolt as well. That said, Max Hailstorm immediately does a ton of damage to Dragapult, and it activates a weakness policy. Okay. Dragapult doing a pretty good job so far trying to save this game for Staff United. Solid backup plan after the Regigigas went down, but it has taken a lot of damage. Let's see what Arctozolt goes for here. It's just Bolt Beak and a Wheezing. It could be Choice Locked, or just not have a good attack to click into Dragapult. I don't know. But the Dragapult does get a little bit of a break from that, and this time the Will-O-Wisp from Wheezing lands into Arctozolt. I feel like I've probably called Arctozolt the wrong name at least a couple more times already here, but I don't know. It's burned. Wheezing switches out. Nihilego comes in. We get a Max Guard from Ninetales on its last turn of Dynamax. That'll protect it from the Max Steel Spike for now, but... Oh, and Nihilego took a ton from Bolt Beak, even with the burn. The Galar fossils are ridiculous. Yeah, but Ninetales' Dynamax is now over, and Dragapult still has one more Max Steel Spike it can throw off. Wheezing coming back in now, as it's Max Flare into Arctozolt, takes that out, sets up the Sun. Ninetales goes for Aurora Veil. Not able to set that up because the move only works in Hail, and Staff United choosing just the right time when the Ninetales has the option to click that move if it has it, to change the weather and make sure that it doesn't happen. I don't know what the Bisharps have in the back. Maybe there was something counting on those screens. We'll find out. Tapu Koko comes in. Not a very bulky Pokemon. Dragapult just protects, though. Ninetales protects as well. We see Dazzling Gleam from Tapu Koko, chipping the Wheezing a tiny bit. It's Life Orb Koko, eats a Sludge Bomb. It does narrowly survive the Sludge Bomb, but it gets poisoned, so it doesn't actually survive. Never mind. Bit of good luck there for Staff United. And we see Dragapult's Steel-type attack. It's Steel Wing. It one-shots the Terrakion at +2 attack. Dragapult drops to a Moonblast, but it's just a little bit too late for the Bashful Bisharps. The Sludge Bomb from Wheezing finishes off the Ninetales. So, recap of the game. The Bisharps brought out a crazy tech turn 1, took out the Regigigas, no problem. The Dynamax Ninetales was pretty exciting to see, and the Arctozolt was doing crazy damage with Bolt Beak even after it got burned. But Staff United, then with the Steel Wing, Fire Attack, Weakness Policy Dragapult, which, you know, they positioned carefully, they protected it when they needed to, they changed the weather at just the right time to avoid... I don't know if the Terrakion would have been able to save the game before the Bisharps regardless, but it didn't get the opportunity to do it behind screens. The Dragapult came through and just absolutely swept after Regigigas went down turn 1. Now, Staff United, they like to mix up their modes. Very often in a Game 2, we see something very different from what they brought in Game 1. So we'll see what adjustments the Bisharps have for the Dragapult, but we'll also see whether Staff United have something else up their sleeves right now. Let's go to Game 2. It's... what is going on with some of these nicknames this week? It's Slowking and Terrakion against Meowstic and Dragapult, okay. Dragapult leading this time. Slowking Dynamax is turn 1. We saw a crazy turn 1 Dynamax from the Ninetales. Let's see what the Slowking can go for. But Meowstic sets Reflect, and Dragapult goes for Fly. No Dynamax this turn. Fly is actually a really good move in Sword and Shield on Dynamax attackers, because of course it turns into Max Airstream, and that's the best move in the game. So Dragapult pretty often ran Fly in Sword and Shield VGC. Thundurus ran Fly with Defiant. I used that a lot in restricted formats. Thundurus isn't a restricted Pokemon, but it was really good in restricted formats. But it's not so often that you see a Pokemon actually click Fly without Dynamaxing, because you do have all the drawbacks of it being a 2-turn move. But Dragapult goes for that. If Slowking targets it with something, then this will waste a turn of Slowking's Dynamax, so that's pretty good. It's Rock Slide from Terrakion, misses Dragapult because of the Fly, and Dragapult does avoid a Max Phantasm from Slowking. Meowstic sets the light screen now, Fly goes into Terrakion, does some chip. Dragapult will take some hits now. It's Max Hailstorm from Slowking. It does KO the Dragapult and set the Hail up, so we won't see Weakness Policy Dragapult sweep this one, but it did stall a turn of Slowking's Dynamax with the Fly. That's not bad. And that said, there could still be Arctozolt in the back, and they have set up the Hail for that. But Staff United still have their Dynamax, so anything could happen from here. Nihilego comes in. It Dynamaxes. Is it going to go for Max... okay, it's Max Guard turn 1. I'm thinking Max Rockfall to change the weather. Make Arctozolt's life a lot harder. But it is Max Guard turn 1 on this Stomping Tantrum from Terrakion. That gives Meowstic a chance to KO Terrakion with the Psychic. Slowking goes for Max Mindstorm on the last turn of its Dynamax, but Nihilego guarded itself. So Slowking only landed 1 hit that whole time. Now Ninetales comes in. Still no Arctozolt yet. And Meowstic actually goes for Sunny Day. No Max Rockfall needed. Wait. Oh, okay, I see. Sunny Day... okay, the speed interaction here is pretty cool. For a second I was thinking, why did they click Sunny Day when they also clicked Max Rockfall the same turn? But of course, if you watched Game 1, you should know the answer already. Hang on, what's the base speed here? I feel like Nihilego is higher base speed than Ninetales. Nope, Ninetales is higher base speed. Yeah, okay, so Meowstic having Prankster is able to go first this turn, and that's very important to get rid of the Hail because it prevents the Ninetales from using Aurora Veil. Ninetales went for Aurora Veil, it failed because the wrong weather was up. Now Nihilego can set up a Sandstorm. But if they had just gone for the Sandstorm and not the Sun, then Ninetales would have gotten the Aurora Veil before the Sandstorm went up. Ninetales switches out to Arctozolt. Ninetales will get a chance to switch back in and set the Hail up again. But we see Nihilego go for Max Rockfall. I paused as the animation was playing when Arctozolt got kind of squished there. That was funny. Butterfree has come in for Meowstic, which is interesting. But yeah, Arctozolt just gets knocked out. So it's not going to get a chance to go crazy in the Hail. Nihilego gets a special attack Beast Boost from that. Takes a Muddy Water, no problem. Ninetales is back. The Hail is back. Nihilego's Dynamax is over, but Arctozolt is gone. Ninetales is the fastest Pokemon here. Throws off a Blizzard. Doesn't KO even the Butterfree through screens. Doesn't get a freeze or anything. Ninetales drops to a Power Gem. And that just leaves Slowking against +2 Nihilego and Butterfree. Butterfree goes for Pollen Puff. I would think it could have knocked out Slowking there, but maybe not. I don't know how strong this Butterfree is. It's probably support Butterfree. It's probably not very strong. I don't know the calc. In any case, I guess it also wasn't necessarily a given that Slowking would be the only Pokemon left, right? Like Ninetales could have protected. No reason not to get Nihilego nice and healthy here. That can guarantee the game as well. Slowking does get to throw off a Blizzard and take out Butterfree. But now Meowstic is back, and more importantly... Oh, Nihilego flexes a little bit with Meteor Beam on the last turn. That kind of feels like a little bit of showboating, right? Because that could have missed. And +2 Power Gem definitely KOs. But I guess just showing off the tech that they brought that they didn't really need in the set, but just kind of flexing to us that they have it. That's pretty cool. Meteor Beam Nihilego closes this one out. So the Regigigas was completely shut down. The Bisharps found a really creative way to do it, but then the other offensive Pokemon from Staff United, I mean, they had good supports in place as well, right? Like the Weezing, I think, took 2 KOs in Game 1. The Meowstic took out the Terrakion at just the right time in Game 2. But the other 2 offensive Pokemon in Dragapult and Nihilego really went crazy here, and Staff United still take the 2-0. Now we get to the sets that had extensions. First up is the Elegancy taking on the East Coast Espurr. The Elegancy have brought a familiar core, although there's no Hatterene this time. Against me last week, they had the combination of Magic Powder, Hatterene, turning my Pokemon into Psychic types, with Max Flutterby from Escavalier, or they could have something like Shadow Ball from Chandelure. But there's no Hatterene this time. They do still have the Chandelure and the Alolan Exeggutor, so they have plenty of opportunities to set up Trick Room with Pokemon that are strong in that Trick Room. They still have Escavalier to be an absolute menace as a Trick Room attacker. They have 2 Dark-type cats supporting this team. Not 1, but 2. The Liepard is here, and the Incineroar is here. Both very disruptive Pokemon in different ways, but it is that Trick Room mode with the Escavalier, Chandelure, and Alolan Exeggutor that should provide most of the offense here. Granted, we've seen Scarf Nidoking from this team, and Nidoking, strong special attacker, great coverage. Could be very disruptive here itself. We only see 1 new Pokemon from the Espurr showing up in this matchup. The Braviary is here. There's no Intimidate. Actually, there is Intimidate on the other side. There's Incineroar. I'm just not used to them bringing it. So we might see the Defiant activate this week, but we'll also probably get a look at what else Braviary can bring to the table. Colossal is here with Primarina, so they have the option of using Aqua Jet to activate Steam Engine and a weakness policy. And Colossal is very weak to Nidoking, but it kind of goes crazy into things like Chandelure, Incineroar, and Escavalier. A lot of this team doesn't want to deal with it outside of Trick Room if it gets set up. They also have the Alolan Marowak, which is a menace inside of Trick Room. Let me quickly check the speed interactions. Escavalier should be the slowest Pokemon for the Elegancy. And Alolan Marowak is faster than Escavalier. It ties with Alolan Exeggutor. It's slower than Chandelure. Okay, so a lot of possible interactions if they get Trick Room up. They got the Rillaboom. They got the Aromatisse. I don't know what that does. Let's jump in and find out. Actually, what are Aromatisse's abilities? Healer and Aroma Veil. And Aroma Veil, I have Alchemy. I brought it last week. It has Sweet Veil and Aroma Veil. One of them prevents sleep. One of them prevents things like Taunt and Encore. I don't remember which is which. I have Alchemy. I chose one of those abilities intentionally this week. This past week, week 4. It's in Monday's video. Go to Monday's video to find out which of Alchemy's abilities is which, because I knew then, but I don't remember what Aromatisse does. Maybe we'll find out what the ability that Aromatisse does. I'm guessing Aroma Veil is the one that stops sleep. That's the one that I'm locking in as my guess. Nidoking and Incineroar against Braviary and Colossal. We do see Defiant immediately turn 1. Colossal should be threatened by the Nidoking. Nidoking Dynamaxes. Interesting. Braviary Dynamaxes. Colossal just protects. Fake out into Braviary. We know it won't flinch. Max Quake does a lot of damage to Colossal through the Protect. But Braviary now gets a Max Airstream into Nidoking. Nidoking is faster than Braviary, but perhaps not anymore. This is now +1/+1 Braviary. Should be pretty strong, hard to deal with. Nidoking Max Guards, but Braviary not falling for it, goes for a Max Knuckle and one-shots Incineroar, getting itself to +2 attack now. Colossal throws off a Heat Wave, but Nidoking protected itself. Chandelure is here. Colossal switches out to Primarina. It's Max Airstream to KO the Nidoking. This is why Max Airstream is the best move in Sword and Shield. Braviary was slower than Nidoking turn 1, and then just completely overwhelming Nidoking with the speed boost. +2/+2 now on the Braviary, and +1 speed on the Primarina. And Chandelure does go for Trick Room, though. So the speed boosts are not so advantageous anymore, but the Espurr have already taken 2 quick KOs. It is Chandelure and Alolan Exeggutor on the field. They could be very threatening into these Pokemon. Let's see. Giga Drain into Primarina actually doesn't do all that much. Chandelure goes for Haze, wipes out the opponent's speed boosts, but also their offensive boosts. I guess the speed boosts don't really matter. These 2 Pokemon should be slower than these 2 anyway, so I get it. The Hyper Voice almost KOs Chandelure. Brave Bird does KO Alolan Exeggutor. Chandelure not doing any damage that turn, and Alolan Exeggutor just not doing enough into Primarina. Primarina taking that Giga Drain really well means that even without the speed advantage anymore, the Espurr are just able to overwhelm and complete the sweep. Primarina and Braviary just powering through the opponent's team. Already a really solid debut for Braviary, but let's see what happens in the rest of the set. We go now to Game 2. And we get Liepard leading with Escavalier against Braviary and Colossal. So the same lead from the Espurr and the 2 Pokemon we didn't see last game from the Elegancy. I am not surprised to not see Incineroar leading, considering what happened in Game 1. Colossal goes for the Gigantamax. Avoids a fake-out flinch. The Elegancy just can't get these flinches. They're always hitting the Dynamax targets somehow. Braviary just immediately rips a close combat into Escavalier. It does half. And G-Max Volcalith, no boost needed, knocks Liepard down to its Focus Sash, and of course sets up the residual damage that will KO Liepard at the end of this turn. Escavalier gets Sword Stance. It's a +2 attack, but there's no Trick Room up, and it's at down to a third of its health already. Nidoking is here. Nidoking, we know, is faster than these Pokemon. So it is an offensive threat, but it's still not setting up that Trick Room for the Escavalier. Nidoking Dynamaxes. Colossal just max guards. It'll take nothing from the Max Quake this time, and Braviary knocks out Escavalier with a close combat. That Sword Stance will not be used. Last 2 Pokemon for the Elegancy. The last one is Alolan Exeggutor. Colossal gives up the rest of its Dynamax, just switches out. It did what it wanted to do already. Aromatisse comes in, as Braviary is knocked out by a Nidoking Max Hailstorm. And Exeggutor follows up with a Draco Meteor, but Aromatisse, Fairy type, takes nothing from that. Well, we get to see Aromatisse do something other than wall Fairy type attack, or a Dragon type attack. Let's see. Primarina comes in. It's Ally Switch from Aromatisse. Max Quake into Primarina hits Aromatisse instead. Does a lot of damage, but importantly, none to Primarina. Moonblast does not take out the Exeggutor, though. Exeggutor gets a Citrus Berry. It just goes for Giga Drain. It crits Aromatisse and knocks it out. We did see Aromatisse do something. It was Ally Switch. Primarina is still here. +2 special, or +1 special defense on both these Pokemon, though, and with Harvest, Exeggutor gets his berry back. It's kind of healthy. Colossal comes in. Nidoking's Dynamax is over. Nidoking can still click an Earth Power into Colossal. And it does, and it KOs. Primarina with the speed advantage, though, takes out the Nidoking. That +1 special defense, not enough after Dynamax wears off. Exeggutor gets a Giga Drain into Primarina. We already know that doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it is now a 1v1. Primarina, not as healthy as Exeggutor, but it reveals the Ice Beam. Moonblast, Hyper Voice. Moonblast's already super effective into Exeggutor, but Ice Beam targeting that double weakness even better. And the special defense boost on Alolan Exeggutor is not enough for it to pull through in this game, as this time the Elegancy did not get Trick Room up, and Primarina is able to complete the sweep. Granted, the Elegancy did get Trick Room up last game, and Primarina and Braviary still overwhelmed them. They kept it closer this time, but the Primarina, just too much for them to handle. And that is 2 different starter Pokemon that we've seen go crazy on the East Coast Espurr this season. The Rillaboom has put in a ton of work some point this season. The Primarina did it this week, and it's not a starter Pokemon, but we're still yet to see what they do with Dracozolt when they eventually bring it some later week. Maybe. We'll see. 1 set left. Dreamyard Darkrais versus Windsor Whiscash. The Darkrais bringing that Indeedee Hawlucha mode brand new right away. They also have the Rain mode with the Politoed setting up for the Swift Swim Dreadnought. Always interesting to see whether it's G-Max Dreadnought or not. They did post their pace to the Discord, but I didn't take much of a look at it, so I don't actually... I did glance at it, but just for a second, so I really don't know whether it's G-Max Dreadnought or not. They have the Azelf. Now, Azelf... Something that I forgot to mention, I'm realizing now I forgot to mention in the trade talk, is Indeedee sets up Psy-Spam options for the Dreamyard Darkrais. Celebi can get a boosted Expanding Force from the Psychic Terrain set up by Indeedee. That's another thing that it brings to the table for this team that I just somehow completely forgot to say. Azelf, though, is in a trickier spot because Azelf has Levitate. It does not benefit from terrain unless it holds an Iron Ball, which then makes it slower. So... if we see Azelf click Expanding Force in this Psychic Terrain, we'll find out what it does or doesn't have. But yeah, it is not a Pokemon that inherently gets that boost, which is a little bit of a tricky thing for the synergy with this team. That said, and Reckless Trico has pointed this out in the Discord, Azelf is faster and hits harder otherwise than Celebi, so a little bit tricky to figure out your Psychic type offensive options there. Either way, the Indeedee should still enable the Hawlucha. On the Windsor Whiscash side, we have Circuitry, which could be very strong into Politoed, Dreadnought, and Zapdos, and Hawlucha. Actually, Circuitry could go crazy this week if it's positioned right. It should have a lot of help from the Gastrodon redirecting water attacks from Dreadnought and Politoed. The Barraskewda could be interesting with Swift Swim, right? Outspeeding Dreadnought in the opponent's own reign. Maybe make things harder for Hawlucha as well. Barraskewda has a really high speed stat. I had it in a past season, and honestly, just having its speed stat in the builder and that being something that my opponent had to prep for was the very best thing it brought to the table. Like, even Unburdened Hawlucha will be outsped by Swift Swim Barraskewda, I believe. They have the Sableye for Prankster shenanigans. They have the Moltres, which should hold up really well against a possible Psy Spam mode. Also gives them something against Hawlucha, right? Because it can Dynamax and Max Airstream and probably overwhelm Hawlucha. So, I don't know what the game plans are, but the Whiscash have a lot of pretty solid offensive options that they could go with here. I think the circuitry looks really strong at face value here, as long as they make sure to protect it well with Pokemon like Sableye, Gastrodon, and maybe even Barraskewda protecting it by outspeeding and pressuring opponents. Let's see. Azelf leads with Zapdos against Child Labor and Barraskewda. Barraskewda Dynamax is turn 1. It's going to set up the rain itself since the Darkrais didn't do that for it. Sableye will flinch Zapdos with a Fake Out, take some Helmet Chip back. And I'm wrong, it's not rain, it just goes for Max Hailstorm into Zapdos. Does a lot of damage, doesn't KO. Zapdos does flinch though. Azelf goes for Zen Headbutt into Sableye, maybe anticipating a switch there. I don't know. Oh, okay. Lol, yeah, he's a Dark type. Never mind. Not anticipating a switch, I guess. Here's a kind of switch. Sableye goes for Ally Switch, giving Barraskewda another shot at Zapdos. Zapdos goes for Detect, though. Does the Max Hailstorm KO? It does not. Azelf gets an Energy Ball that crits Sableye. That probably would have wiped out Barraskewda. That's not a very bulky Pokemon, so good Ally Switch there for the Whiscash. As the hail damage is chipping things down. Azelf now Dynamax is 2 turns offset from Barraskewda, and we see Sableye. They are ready to set up their own rain. Sableye going for the Rain Dance as Barraskewda just wipes Azelf out with a Max Geyser. Max Geyser does set the rain up itself, but the advantage of this is you get the rain up before you click Max Geyser. You get the rain boost on your water type damage immediately, right? That first Max Geyser would not be boosted. Actually, that only Max Geyser, because their Dynamax is about to wear off, would not be boosted without Sableye clicking the Rain Dance first. Azelf is gone. Dynamax is over on both sides. Barraskewda is knocked out by a Thunderbolt crit. And now we see Politoed and Gastrodon come in. Another Ally Switch from the Sableye. This Ally Switch in Gen 8 does work repeatedly if you use it. It doesn't have that chance to fail like it does in Gen 9. But of course, that creates a bit of a mind game, right? If they keep clicking Ally Switch over and over and over, the Darkrais might start to call that and not be fooled by it. But they are doing a decent job of kind of mixing. They're using Ally Switch pretty heavily here, but they are mixing in some other moves as well, so it's a little bit hard to predict. In any case, Politoed Ice Beam chips Gastrodon. Zapdos Hurricane takes out Sableye. No more Ally Switch for now, but Gastrodon hits back with an Ice Beam and KOs Zapdos. And now we got the last 2 Pokemon on each side. Gastrodon and Circuitry against Politoed and Dreadnought. I mean, this looks like what you want if you're the Windsor Whiscash, right? They can't click a big boosted water attack into Circuitry, so Circuitry, especially if it has Discharge, your own Gastrodon is immune and you do a lot of damage to these two. Right? I mean, they could have some, the Dreadnought can probably hit the Circuitry pretty hard, but not with a rain boosted attack. So it looks like this is the kind of endgame that the Whiscash should want. And both sides have used their Dynamax already, so that takes the variables out. Dreadnought goes for Rock Slide. It does a lot of damage to Circuitry. Does it flinch? Ooh, Circuitry. Okay, Politoed also faster than Circuitry. Lower base speed, but the Politoed is trained to be faster than the Circuitry. But it narrowly misses the KO with Ice Beam, so they do get a Thunder into Dreadnought, which knocks it out. But now Circuitry can be knocked out by Politoed, but Gastrodon is still here. Maybe it can beat Politoed. Ice Beam is not an amazing start, not great damage. Circuitry does drop to an Ice Beam. It's Scald on the Gastrodon. Okay, it does respectable rain boosted damage. There's the burn chance. They don't get a burn. It's Ice... Oh, Ice Beam freezes Gastrodon. Gastrodon is a Citrus Berry. It thaws immediately, though, because it went for Scald. Scald is one of the few moves in the game, like Flare Blitz and Sacred Fire, where if you click it while you're frozen, it will thaw you. So, Scald really... You see, it says here, Scald melted the ice. So, really beneficial to Gastrodon here that it has that move. It's just a question of what kind of damage these two Pokemon can do to each other. Looks like the Politoed is damaging more quickly because it has that neutral attack to click. If the Gastrodon had Earth Power, it does get a Scald Burn now. Okay, protects. Oh, can Gastrodon win this on a double protect? Yeah, it can. But they don't get it. That was a 1 in 3 chance that Gastrodon would win that game. Okay, Politoed was out damaging Gastrodon. It had that neutral Ice Beam to click. Gastrodon, I guess, doesn't have Earth Power. So it's left with Scald. A Scald Burn on Politoed earlier, because the margin is so small here, a Scald Burn on Politoed earlier could have won it for them. Or if they'd just gotten the double protect there, Politoed would have dropped a burn damage. So, you know, if the Whiscash had slightly better luck in this game, they would have taken it, but they don't. And so the Dreamyard Darkrais pull through. And I will just say, by the way, as a fan of the Toronto Raptors, I'm not too upset to see 2016 LeBron lose this one. I remember that season. I remember that Eastern Conference final. It's not LeBronto here, but maybe it will be in Game 2. Let's see. Indeedee leads with Hawlucha this time against Child Labor and Barraskewda. Hawlucha does have that Psychic Seed, of course. It Dynamaxes. Barraskewda Dynamaxes. Rain Dance. Hawlucha's still faster. Okay. I could be silly here and be like, oh no, they didn't give enough speed EVs to the Barraskewda. But I actually did get a spoiler for this one as well. It's Propeller Tail Barraskewda. At preview, pretending I don't know things. Breaking Swift Swim against the Darkrais looks pretty good. You can pressure them. Especially that Dynamax Barraskewda. It is Propeller Tail, unfortunately. Max Airstream crits the Barraskewda, does a lot of damage, gives speed boost to these Pokemon. And we see Energy Ball in the Indeedee, chipping the Sableye. Max Geyser does so much to the Hawlucha, but it's going to be faster than Barraskewda still. Now, it actually max guards this turn. Indeedee goes for Expanding Force, takes out Barraskewda with that, so Hawlucha doesn't have to be worried about it at all. Moltres is here. I said that Moltres could maybe be interesting against Hawlucha if it Dynamaxed, but the Whiscash have already used their Dynamax. However, they do switch to Circuitry, so they have 2 threats on the field now. It does change the position a bit for the Darkrais, and Indeedee has shown Expanding Force and Energy Ball. Moltres doesn't much care about either of those. We'll see what Hawlucha can do to it. It's Helping Hand Indeedee into Hawlucha. Moltres protects, though. Max Rockfall into Moltres. Crits. Does a little bit more than half. That does give it the Berserk boost, though, and Hawlucha's Dynamax will wear off. But Hawlucha is probably threatening a big Rock Slide or something now. Close Combat into Moltres takes it out. Okay. Expanding Force does not KO the Circuitry. Circuitry throws back a Dazzling Gleam, takes out Hawlucha, gets a Beast Boost, but Indeedee is still here. Zapdos is here. Sableye is back. Ally Switch, but Expanding Force and Psychic Terrain doesn't care about that. Zapdos takes out the Sableye with a Thunderbolt crit for good measure. I mean, the Darkrais had this one anyway. But Game 1 was so close. There have been some incredibly close games this week. If they just get that double protect or they get the Scald Burn earlier in Game 1, it's a different set. I mean, it goes to Game 3, and who knows what happens then. I talked up the Circuitry as a threat. I think it was just too slow in this matchup. Maybe they needed like Moltres Tailwind or Sableye spreading Paralysis or something, although you can't paralyze Zapdos. Circuitry had massive offensive presence in this game that just couldn't quite capitalize on because I mean, being outsped by the Politoed was pretty rough. That didn't have to be the case, but it was also was necessarily outsped by, you know, Hawlucha, boosted Indeedee, Swift Swim Dreadnought. That Sableye is an outright Goblin, though. That's kind of true. And most importantly, we rewrote history here. 2016 LeBron was unable to bring it home. I'm not too upset about that one. No hate for LeBron, but I am a Raptors fan, and I don't mind that history being rewritten a little bit. But anyway, that was week 4 of the PDL. Once again, a crazy week, some wild techs. The Calyrex was crazy. The Dynamax Alola Ninetales was pretty exciting, despite how that game turned out. And some incredibly close games and incredibly close sets as well. This has been a super fun, competitive season. I wasn't sure how I felt about going back to Sword and Shield VGC for this season, but it was exactly what I needed. I think it's been... I love Scarlet and Violet, but going back to Sword and Shield with all the crazy techs you can run with Pokemon we haven't seen in a while has been a breath of fresh air. And there's still half a regular season, and then the playoffs left to go, so stick around. Who knows what is even possibly going to happen from here.